Welcome to Cardano for Everyone, a podcast series from Pasta Steak Pool. Each episode explores something new about Cardano in a way that's simple and accessible for everyone. In the mood for some Cardano magic? Let's get started.
All right, so let's get into Ouroboros today. It's really a whole different way to think about how cryptocurrencies can be secure and efficient. I'm excited to dig into this with you. It's the innovative proof-of-stake protocol. What I think is really exciting about Ouroboros is its journey. Like, it hasn't stayed static, constantly evolving.
Ouroboros. First proof-of-stake protocol to actually go through, real scientific scrutiny. It's been mathematically proven. You don't see that a lot in the crypto world. But knowing a system has been checked out, that gives you confidence.
A secure foundation is really essential for trust. But I've heard that Ouroboros isn't just one thing. It keeps, evolving. What are these different versions? How have they built on the original concept?
Well, like any good tech, Ouroboros is always being refined. You start with Ouroboros Classic, the foundation. Then you get Ouroboros Prowess, even more resilient. It can adapt, like if the internet goes out or attacks.
So even if parts of the network are disrupted, Prios can keep things running.
Keeps the whole blockchain running smoothly.
That's pretty crucial in a world where, the internet's not always the most reliable.
It's self-healing. The blockchain can keep working even with all these challenges.
So it's adaptable.
Ouroboros isn't just processing transactions. It's designed to solve the biggest problems. Think energy consumption, scalability, those kinds of things.
With Bitcoin using so much energy, Cardano's efficiency is getting attention for sure. I'm interested to hear how they do it.
Well, first, got to contrast it with the Bitcoin. Proof of work. That's what Bitcoin uses. Miners use insane computing power to add blocks. Solving puzzles, basically, which just eats up energy.
So how's proof of stake different?
It's stakeholders instead of miners. They hold ADA, Cardano's cryptocurrency, and they get a chance to validate transactions.
But how does that save energy?
No more massive computation puzzles. Stakeholders are chosen randomly, but it's verifiable, so it's still secure.
Okay, random but secure.
The more ADA you hold, the more voting power you have.
That's interesting, giving power back to the users. This all sounds really good. Speaking of doing things differently, there's that whole token burning debate, right?
Yeah, Cardano's founder has strong opinions on that. Token burning is a big topic in crypto. It's basically destroying some of the cryptocurrency to make the rest more valuable.
Like supply and demand. But why would anyone destroy their own crypto?
The idea is to make what's left more scarce and therefore more valuable.
So it's like companies buying back their own stock, but Cardano's against it.
They say it's like stealing from the stakeholders, especially the people running the staked pools.
Why them?
They're the ones securing the network, and they're actively involved. Burning tokens takes away from their rewards.
I see. So what does Cardano want to do instead?
Reinvest those funds back into the ecosystem.
So use the money to make Cardano better.
Exactly. Support development, encourage more users, focus on long-term growth.
It's a long-term vision, not a quick fix.
What I think is so interesting about Ouroboros is it's not just one thing. It's a family of protocols. And each generation builds on the last one to solve some specific problems in the blockchain world.
Also, it's like a tech family tree. That's a little different from what I usually hear about with Bitcoin.
So we can start with the very first one, Ouroboros Classic. When Ouroboros Classic first came out, the idea of provable security was a pretty radical idea, especially in the blockchain space.
So instead of just using lots of energy to get that security, we're talking about a system that's mathematically guaranteed to be safe.
Unlike the early days of Bitcoin and proof of work, Ouroboros Classic uses math to make sure things are safe.
But the internet isn't always reliable. Connections can be spotty, things lag. What happens if something goes wrong in the middle of a transaction?
Well, that's where Ouroboros Prowess comes in. It's designed to deal with those unpredictable things that can happen, all the little hiccups. You have a decentralized network. Things like that are going to happen.
So even with a few problems, the system is still protected.
And Prowess actually uses something called forward secure signatures, which basically means that even if someone figures out how to get into a node's keys in the future, the blocks that were added in the past are still secure.
So it's like future-proofing the blockchain's history. That's a level of security I haven't heard of before. But what about new people to the network? Say someone joins Cardano years from now. Do they have to download the whole history of the blockchain?
Nope. That's where Ouroboros Genesis comes in. It lets new people join really easily. They just need to sync up using the very first block, which is called the Genesis block.
So no need to download tons and tons of data. That's great. But one of the things I've always heard about Cardano is how much it can scale. Can it handle lots of users and transactions without slowing down?
And that's where Ouroboros Chronos comes in. Think of it as a blockchain that acts like a clock, but there's no central timekeeper.
Wait, how does that even work? Clocks need a reference point to be accurate, right?
That's what's so cool about Chronos. It lets all the different nodes on the network share a sense of time, even if their local clocks are off.
So it's like each node has a little clock inside, but somehow they all agree on one time for the whole blockchain.
Pretty much.
Okay, my mind is blown. What about privacy? Does Ouroboros deal with all those data protection issues?
Of course. Privacy is really important, and Cardano is very serious about that. That's where Ouroboros Crypsinus comes in. It's designed to keep transactions confidential.
So you can prove you have the money without giving up personal info. That's pretty cool. Can you give me an example?
Think of it like you're trying to get into a club. You have to prove you're old enough, but you don't want to show your ID.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
Crypsinus uses zero-knowledge proofs, which lets you prove things without giving away extra info. Crypsinus protects things like who sent the money, who received it, and how much it was.
Okay, so we've got this whole family of Ouroboros protocols, each one with its own special thing. But why should I care? How does this benefit me?
Let's zoom out and look at the big picture first. Ouroboros is designed to use energy efficiently. Unlike Bitcoin's proof of work, Cardano's proof of stake uses way less energy.
So it's like choosing a fuel-efficient car.
Exactly. That's a big deal for Cardano. But it's not just about being green. It's also about how Ouroboros can scale.
Right, because blockchains can be slow, especially when they're busy. How does Ouroboros help with that?
It uses layers, like a multi-lane highway. Cardano uses a system called Hydra, which is a layer 2 scaling solution. It basically takes transactions off the main blockchain, so things can move faster.
So instead of one crowded highway, you've got multiple lanes to keep things moving. Clever. But speed and efficiency don't matter if the system isn't secure.
Right. That's true. And that's another area where Ouroboros is really strong.
Okay, so how does it work?
It uses several layers of defense to protect against attacks. It's been carefully tested using formal methods like mathematical proof.
So we've got efficiency, we've got scalability, we've got security. But you mentioned epochs and slots earlier. Can you break those down for me?
Imagine an epoch is like a chapter in a book.
Okay.
Each chapter is made up of pages, which we call slots. And during each slot, a leader is randomly chosen to add a new block of transactions to the chain.
So it's a constantly growing story, with each slot being a new page. But how do they choose a leader? What's to stop someone from cheating and becoming the leader all the time?
That's where random leader election comes in. It's all about making things fair.
Okay, how does that work?
Ouroboros uses a special random number generator. It's like a lottery. And anyone who has staked some ADA has a chance to be picked.
So the more ADA you stake, the better your chances of becoming a leader.
Exactly. That's one of the ways Cardano encourages people to participate. And it helps keep the network secure.
Okay, cool. But what does a slot leader actually do?
Well, they have a really important job. They create new blocks, and they add them to the chain.
So they're like the builders of the blockchain.
They also have to make sure transactions follow the rules, and they collect fees for their work.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if they try to cheat?
Well, Cardano has ways to prevent that. If a slot leader tries to double spend coins, or if they try to create invalid blocks, they could lose their stake.
So walk me through how these blocks are made.
Sure. Each block has a header. It's like a summary of what's in the block. It includes a timestamp, a hash of the previous block, and a Merkle root, which is like a fingerprint of all the transactions in the block.
So it's a record of everything that happened. But how do other nodes know about the new block?
The slot leader announces it to the whole network, and the other nodes check to make sure everything is correct. They check the header, they check their own records, and if it's all good, they add the block to their copy of the blockchain.
So they all have to agree.
Yes, that's what keeps the blockchain secure and accurate.
But that sounds like it takes time.
But there are ways to speed things up. Ouroboros pros. Besides dealing with network delays, it uses something called pipelining.
Pipelining.
It allows blocks to be processed at the same time.
Oh, like an assembly line.
Yeah, and researchers are working on other ways to improve things. They're trying to make the blocks smaller, and they're looking at new ways to organize the data.
Okay, so we've covered how Ouroboros handles scale, security, and even privacy. But who are the people behind all of this?
It's a team effort. One of the main players is Input Output Global. They're usually called IOG. They're a research and engineering company, and they're leading the development of Cardano.
So they're the brains behind the project.
Yeah, you could say that. They've got some of the smartest people working on this, cryptography experts, blockchain experts.
Sounds like a dream team. But who else is involved?
There's also the Cardano Foundation. They handle the non-technical stuff,
Like what?
building the community, and generally making sure more people use Cardano.
So they're like the ambassadors for Cardano.
And then, of course, there's the community itself. They're a huge part of this. They test the new features, they give feedback, and they even suggest improvements.
That's pretty cool. But does that ever cause problems, having so many different people involved?
It can be challenging, but it's also really amazing. It shows the power of open source development. It means anyone can contribute,
Okay,
and everyone has a voice.
I like that.
And everyone has the same goal to make Cardano the best blockchain it can be.
I'm impressed. Okay, so we've got all these people working together. We've got all these cool features in Ouroboros. But are there any real-world examples of this being used?
Of course. One of the biggest ones is the partnership between IOHK and the Ethiopian Ministry of Education.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
They're using Cardano's Atala Prism to create a system for managing student and teacher credentials.
So they can prove who they are.
And it can't be faked.
That's pretty amazing. Are there any other examples?
They're also using it for supply chain management. Cardano can track where products come from
Okay.
and make sure they're authentic.
So no fake products.
Exactly. It helps businesses. And it protects consumers.
What about finance? Are they using Ouroboros for DeFi?
Oh, yeah. DeFi is a big part of the Cardano ecosystem.
What kind of DeFi projects are they doing?
There are decentralized exchanges, lending platforms.
What are those?
You can borrow and lend crypto and stablecoins.
Oh, yeah, those are designed to stay stable.
Exactly.
So Cardano's getting into all the different areas of finance. So they want things to move faster. But isn't it important to be careful?
It is, and that's Cardano's philosophy. Prioritize security and stability over speed.
Okay, so it's about quality over quantity.
They understand that building a truly decentralized and secure blockchain takes time and effort.
Okay, so they're willing to be patient.
They believe the wait will be worth it.
So what's next for Cardano? What kind of future are they building?
They're working on a lot of different things. One of their main goals is to make the world a more fair and sustainable place.
But how are they doing that?
One way is by focusing on identity, like we talked about with Atala Prism.
Making sure people have control over their digital identity.
They're working on supply chain transparency, they're looking at voting systems, and they're even exploring a decentralized marketplace for renewable energy.
Wow, that's amazing. It sounds like they're really trying to make a difference.
They believe that blockchain technology can change the world.
But earlier you mentioned something about different eras of development for Cardano. Can you tell me more about that?
So Cardano's development follows a kind of roadmap with these distinct eras, and each one focuses on different goals.
Okay, so what were the different eras?
Well, the first one was called Byron. That was all about setting up the basics, getting the infrastructure in place.
So like the foundation for everything else.
Then came Shelley. Shelley was all about decentralization, shifting control of the network from a single entity to a distributed network of stake pool operators.
So that's when it really started to become a community-driven project.
Shelley was really important for making Cardano what it is today. Then came Goguen, and I think that was a really big deal for Cardano
Why is that?
because that's when smart contracts were introduced. Those are basically agreements written in code that can execute themselves.
Okay, so that means you can do more complex transactions.
And it opened up a whole new world for decentralized applications, or dApps.
So Goguen was like a game changer.
It really expanded what people could do with Cardano.
Okay, cool. So we've had Byron, Shelley, Goguen. What's next?
Well, right now we're in the Basho era, and this one is all about scaling, making sure the network can handle lots of transactions and doing it quickly and efficiently.
Okay, so that ties back to what we were talking about before.
Exactly. Remember Hydra?
Yeah, the layer 2 scaling solution.
That's a big part of Basho.
So they're really trying to make Cardano ready for mass adoption.
That's the goal.
Okay, cool. But what about the community? Do they have any say in all of this?
That's where the next era comes in. Voltaire is all about governance, giving the community control over the future of Cardano.
Wow, so they'll actually be able to make decisions about how the platform evolves. But with all these changes, how do they make sure that everything still works together?
That's a good question. And it's one of the biggest challenges with hard forks.
So what do they do?
They have to make sure that older versions of the software can still communicate with the new upgraded network.
Oh, so it's like making sure your old phone charger still works with your new phone.
It's called backward compatibility, and Cardano takes it very seriously.
Okay, that makes sense. So they do a lot of testing to make sure everything works smoothly.
Any changes to the protocol, no matter how small, have to be carefully tested to make sure they don't create any new vulnerabilities.
Right, because you don't want to make the system weaker.
They use those formal methods we talked about to verify that the code is correct and secure. And that's one of the reasons why Cardano has a reputation for being so secure.
Okay, that's good to know. But with all this talk about Cardano's future, I'm curious about how Ouroboros fits into the big picture. Well, there's so many different blockchains out there. What makes Ouroboros unique? What are its strengths? And maybe its weaknesses too.
I think one of the things that makes Ouroboros really special is its focus on provable security, also its energy efficiency. And then there's the whole community governance aspect.
Which is really interesting.
I think those three things together really set Ouroboros apart from a lot of other blockchains.
It's like they're not just building a technology, they're building a movement. But let's go back to the way Ouroboros actually works. You mentioned epochs and slots earlier, and this whole idea of a leader being chosen. Can you explain that in more detail?
Sure. So remember that an epoch is like a chapter in the blockchain story. And each epoch is divided into a certain number of slots. And during each slot, a leader is randomly chosen to create a no block and add it to the chain.
Okay, so it's like a constantly rotating group of leaders.
That's where something called verifiable random functions come in. They're usually called VRFs for short.
Okay, and what do VRFs do?
They're basically a cryptographic technique that guarantees that the random numbers being generated are truly random.
So no one can manipulate the system.
It's like a lottery where you can be sure that the numbers are drawn fairly.
But how do people actually participate in this process?
Well, it all comes down to staking. So the more ADA you stake, higher your chances of being selected as a slot leader.
So it's like a reward for supporting the network.
They also validate transactions, making sure they follow the rules. And they collect transaction fees for their work.
So they're kind of like the accountants of the blockchain too.
If a slot leader tries to do something malicious, like double spending coins or creating invalid blocks, they risk losing their stake.
Oh, so there's a built-in punishment system?
You could say that. It's one of the ways Cardano ensures that everyone acts honestly. Well, one of the things they're doing is exploring new ways to reduce the size of the blocks.
Okay, so smaller blocks means faster processing.
And they're also looking at different ways to organize the data to make it easier to access and verify.
They're constantly optimizing the system. So they're not just building it for tech experts.
No, they're not. They believe that blockchain technology has the potential to benefit everyone.
Okay, so they're trying to make it accessible to the masses.
They're developing user-friendly wallets, and they're creating educational resources to help people understand how to use the platform.
That's great to hear, because I think a lot of people are still intimidated by blockchain.
I think you're right. But it doesn't have to be that way. Cardano's working hard to make it easy for anyone to get involved.
Because I think the more people who use blockchain, the better it will be for everyone. Okay, so we've talked about the technology, we've talked about the community, we've talked about the challenges. But what about the future of Cardano? Where do they go from here?
They're going to keep innovating. They're going to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with blockchain technology. Well, one of the big areas of focus right now is scalability. They want to make sure that Cardano can handle millions of transactions per second.
So they can keep up with the demand.
And they're also working on improving interoperability.
Interoperability.
Yeah, it means making sure that Cardano can work seamlessly with other blockchains.
Oh, so that different blockchains can talk to each other.
That's really important for the future of the blockchain space.
I can see why. So Cardano is really trying to position itself as a leader in the blockchain world. I'm really curious to see what they come up with next.
Me too.
And Cardano seems to be right at the forefront of this revolution.
It's not just about building cool technology. It's about using that technology to make the world a better place. One of Cardano's core values is sustainability.
Right, we talked about that earlier, the proof-of-stake consensus mechanism.
It uses far less energy than proof of work.
And they're also actively involved in projects that promote renewable energy.
They want to make sure that the growth of Cardano doesn't come at the expense of the environment.
I like that. It's about finding a balance between technological progress and environmental responsibility. It sounds like they're thinking big.
They are. They believe that blockchain technology has the potential to solve some of the world's biggest problems.
Well, I'm really impressed with everything I've learned today about Ouroboros and about Cardano. It's been a fascinating journey, from the technical details of the protocol to the broader vision of the project, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for Cardano. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into Ouroboros and Cardano. Well, I hope you found it informative and insightful, and we'll see you next time for another exploration of the world of blockchain technology.
Thank you for being part of Cardano for Everyone. We hope you gained something valuable from today's episode. If you'd like to support our mission of making Cardano knowledge accessible for all, consider selecting Pasta from the pool list when you delegate. Every bit of support helps us bring more content to listeners like you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll see you on the next episode.